She was the first person I called when I got promoted. She was the first person I told when I fell in love. She was the one who held my hands at our mother's funeral and whispered, "I'll always have you, no matter what." She was my sister, my best friend, the one person in this world I trusted more than myself. But that was before I found the documents, before the FBI showed up at my door, before I realized that the woman I had loved my entire life had spent 3 years carefully, quietly, deliberately destroying mine. My name is Lila. I'm 34 years old. I grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents and my older sister, Dana. There were only 2 years between us, but Dana always felt like the older one, the smarter one, the louder one, the one who knew how to fill a room. I was quieter, more careful. I liked numbers, I liked structure, and when I graduated college with a degree in finance, I thought I had finally found my place in the world. I built my career slowly, carefully. I saved every dollar I could. By the time I was 30, I had enough to start a small investment portfolio. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine. It was the first thing in my life that felt truly mine. And when Dana came to me with an idea 3 years ago, I didn't hesitate for a single second to let her in. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, those familiar brown eyes full of excitement, and said the words that I now replay over and over in my head like a bad dream I can't wake up from. "Lila, I have a business idea, a real one this time, but I need a partner I can trust, someone who understands money, someone like you." I should have asked more questions. I should have pressed harder, but this was Dana, my sister, my blood, the person who once drove 4 hours in a snowstorm just because I was crying on the phone. I handed over everything. I signed documents I barely read because she was sitting right there, smiling at me. I moved savings I had built over a decade into a joint account that she had already quietly set up in both our names. For the first 6 months, everything looked perfect. She sent me updates, revenue reports, beautiful graphs, and projections. I went to sleep every night feeling safe, feeling proud, feeling like we were building something together. I told my friends about it, I told our aunt, I even recommended it to a woman at my gym who was looking to invest. But what I didn't know that day she sat at my kitchen table was that the business never existed, not a single piece of it. The reports were fabricated. The account she set up was exclusively under her control. I had signed paperwork I never actually read. And the money, my money, years of my life, was already gone, spent on things I would only learn about much later in a cold FBI interview room with a folder of evidence sitting on the table between me and a federal agent who looked at me with the kind of quiet pity that made my stomach drop through the floor. That was the day I realized the person who betrayed me most had never needed to break into my life. I had handed her the keys myself. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. I had called Dana to ask about a withdrawal I noticed, just under $12,000, that had come out of our joint account without any notice. She answered on the third ring, and I could hear something in her voice I had never heard before. Just the faintest edge, the slightest hesitation before she said, "It was a business expense, Lila. I'll explain later. Stop micromanaging." Stop micromanaging. That was what she said to me, about my own money. I remember staring at the wall of my apartment after she hung up, trying to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. I told myself I was overreacting. Dana was just stressed. This was normal for a new business. I trusted her. I trusted her even when she stopped sending the monthly reports, even when she stopped returning my calls as quickly, even when our cousin mentioned, casually in the middle of a birthday dinner, that she had seen Dana at an airport in Miami 2 weeks earlier. And wasn't that funny? Because Dana had told me she was at a business conference in Chicago. I told myself there had to be an explanation. There always was with Dana. She was the kind of person who could explain away anything. Charming, convincing, warm in a way that made you feel crazy for doubting her. So I waited. And while I waited, the account drained. It was a former colleague who finally broke the wall open. She texted me one evening, apologetic and shaky, asking if I was okay because she had tried to contact Dana about the investment she had made on my recommendation, and Dana wasn't responding. I felt something cold settle into my chest like ice water. I called a forensic accountant that night. It took her only 48 hours to come back to me with results that made my entire body go numb. The business was a shell. The financial reports had been created using a free template online, the same logo, the same font, month after month, with the numbers simply changed. The joint account had a clause buried in the fine print that gave the second signatory, Dana, full control over major withdrawals if the primary account holder had not logged in within a 60-day window. I hadn't logged in. I had trusted her so completely that I never even opened the app. Over $340,000 gone. My savings, my emergency fund, the money I had slowly set aside since my first job out of college, all of it channeled, piece by piece, into accounts I had never heard of. Some of it went to luxury travel, some to designer goods, and a significant amount, the part that made the FBI sit up very straight, had moved across state lines in a pattern that triggered a federal wire fraud investigation that had already been quietly underway for 4 months before I ever found out. When I finally confronted Dana, she didn't break down. She didn't cry. She looked at me across our old childhood kitchen, the same kitchen where we used to eat cereal on Saturday mornings in our pajamas, and she said something I will never forget. "You always had more than me, Lila. You always acted like you deserved more than me. I just balanced the scales." I just balanced the scales. As if what I had built was something she was owed. As if years of her choices, her risk-taking, her spending, her pattern of running away from hard work were somehow my fault. I stood there, in that kitchen, and I felt something inside me shift. The grief I had been carrying for days, the disbelief, the heartbreak, it hardened into something else, something quiet and steady and certain. If she wanted to call it balancing the scales, then so be it, because the scale was about to tip in a direction she never saw coming. I didn't plan what happened next. I didn't scheme, I didn't manipulate, I didn't do anything that required me to become the kind of person she had been. All I did was tell the truth, every single piece of it, to the forensic accountant, to my attorney, and most importantly, to the FBI agent who had been building his case against Dana long before she ever sat across from me in that kitchen. It turned out I wasn't the only one. The woman from my gym had invested. 2 friends of Dana's from college had invested. A man she had met at a networking event, a retired teacher living on a fixed income, had put in $22,000 of money he could not afford to lose. Dana had built an entire web, and for 3 years she had kept every thread from touching any of the others. She was careful. She was smart. But she made one mistake. She had used my name, my actual name, my social security number, my professional credibility to recruit investors. That wasn't just fraud, that was identity theft, and it carried a federal charge that her charm and her excuses could not talk her out of. I remember the morning the agents went to her door. I wasn't there. I had specifically chosen not to be. I didn't want to feel satisfaction at my sister being handcuffed. I didn't want that image in my memory. What I wanted was simpler and harder than revenge. I wanted my life back. I wanted accountability, and I wanted every single person she had taken from to be seen. Dana was charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and securities fraud across multiple states. The federal case was airtight. The FBI had been tracking her for months, and my documentation only sealed it further. She faced up to 20 years. Her attorneys negotiated. She ultimately accepted a plea agreement for 7 years, mandatory restitution, and permanent prohibition from working in any financial capacity for the rest of her life. She sent me a letter from the processing facility 3 weeks after her sentencing. I held it for a long time before I opened it. I think part of me hoped it would be a real apology, the kind that costs something. Instead, it was 3 paragraphs about how she never meant for it to go this far, and how she hoped I could find it in my heart to not let this end us, as if the ending had been my choice. "You were always the strong one," she wrote. "I knew you'd be okay." I read that line twice, and then I folded the letter, placed it in the same file where I kept all the documentation, and I let myself cry. Not for the money, not for the betrayal, but for the sister I thought I had, for every breakfast in our childhood kitchen, for every late-night phone call, for the version of Dana that maybe never truly existed, or maybe did once, before something in her decided that taking was easier than building. I'm telling you this story today not because I want sympathy, and not because I'm angry anymore, because I'm not. I'm telling you this because somewhere out there, someone is sitting at a kitchen table with someone they love, signing something they haven't fully read, handing over something they built with years of quiet effort, because they believe that love is the same thing as safety. It isn't. Love and safety are not the same. Trust must be earned, not assumed, and giving it freely to someone just because they share your blood or your history is not generosity. It is a risk, one that can cost you everything. I rebuilt, slowly, carefully, the same way I had built the first time, except this time I did it entirely alone and entirely on my terms. My portfolio today is larger than what I lost, not because I found some shortcut, but because rebuilding after devastation teaches you things that ordinary success never can. It teaches you what you are actually made of. Dana made a choice, and the FBI made sure she lived with it. As for me, I made a choice too. I chose not to let this story end with her. I chose to let it begin with me. The people who hurt us most are often the ones we never thought to protect ourselves from, not because they were hidden, but because we loved them too much to look. Guard your trust like you guard your future, because sometimes they are exactly the same thing.